Henry walked into the animal shelter early in the morning. The building smelled like cleaning soap and old floors. Dogs barked loudly from both sides of the hallway. Some dogs jumped against the metal doors. Some dogs cried softly from the back cages. Henry moved slowly as he held his coat tight around him. He was an old man with tired eyes and quiet steps. People rarely noticed him anymore. The shelter worker at the desk smiled politely. Her name was Lisa. She asked if he needed help. Henry nodded and said he wanted to see the dogs. Lisa pointed toward the front cages. She explained those dogs were young and friendly. Families usually chose those dogs first. Henry thanked her but kept walking forward. He did not stop at the front cages. He walked past the loud barking and playful noise. His eyes searched for something else. The noise slowly faded as he reached the back area. The lights were dimmer there. The air felt colder and quieter. Lisa followed him with confusion. She rarely saw visitors walk this far. Most people never came to the back cages. Henry stopped in front of one small cage. Inside sat an old dog with gray fur. The dog lay on a thin blanket. His body looked tired and weak. One ear bent forward while the other drooped low. His eyes were cloudy but gentle. He did not bark or move suddenly. He only watched Henry closely. Henry knelt down carefully. His knees shook as he lowered himself. The dog slowly lifted his head. Their eyes met through the metal bars. Henry reached out his hand. The dog moved closer and sniffed his fingers. His tail moved once and then stopped. Henry smiled softly. He asked Lisa the dog's name. Lisa said the dog was called Buddy. She explained Buddy had been at the shelter for a long time. Henry asked how long that meant. Lisa said, almost 1 year. Henry looked surprised. He asked why nobody adopted him. Lisa took a deep breath before answering. She said Buddy was old and sick. She said he needed care and patience. She said most people wanted young dogs. Henry listened quietly. He kept his hand resting on Buddy's head. Buddy leaned into the touch. His eyes slowly closed. Henry said Buddy was a good dog. Lisa nodded and agreed. She said Buddy never caused problems. She said Buddy was gentle and calm. Henry stayed silent for a moment. Then he spoke about his own life. He said his house was very quiet now. He said his wife had passed away 2 years ago. He said the silence felt heavy every day. Lisa listened without interrupting. Henry said people stopped visiting him. He said people thought he was fine alone. He said being alone felt worse than being tired. Buddy made a soft sound from his chest. Henry smiled again. He said he understood how Buddy felt. Lisa looked away to hide her tears. She warned Henry that Buddy might not live long. She said the shelter could not promise time. Henry nodded calmly. He said time was never promised to anyone. He said he still wanted Buddy. Lisa asked if he was sure. Henry answered yes without hesitation. He said Buddy needed someone now. Lisa slowly smiled. She went to prepare the adoption papers. Henry waited on a bench nearby. Buddy lay near his feet. The leash rested loose between them. Other workers watched quietly from a distance. They whispered among themselves. They rarely saw someone choose Buddy. Lisa returned with the papers. Henry signed his name slowly. His hands shook but he did not rush. Buddy watched every movement. When the papers were finished, Lisa clipped the leash onto Buddy's collar. Buddy stood up with effort. Henry helped him gently. They walked toward the exit together. Their steps matched in slow rhythm. The shelter felt silent as they passed. Every worker stopped what they were doing. Some smiled while others wiped their eyes. At the door, Henry turned back. He thanked everyone softly. Lisa thanked him in return. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Outside, the air felt fresh and cool. Henry opened the car door. Buddy tried to climb in but struggled. Henry lifted him with care and strength. His arms shook but he did not stop. Buddy rested in the seat quietly. Henry closed the door and walked to the driver's side. He sat down slowly. Before starting the car he looked at Buddy. He placed his hand on Buddy's back. Buddy sighed softly. Henry smiled through tired eyes. He said they would go home now. The car drove away from the shelter. Lisa watched from the doorway. She whispered a quiet hope for them both. Inside the car, two lonely souls began a new journey. Henry drove slowly through the quiet streets. The houses passed by like memories from another life. Buddy lay still in the back seat. His breathing was soft and steady. Henry glanced at him through the mirror. He felt a strange comfort he had not felt in years. The silence in the car was different now. It no longer felt empty. When they reached the house, Henry parked carefully. The house was small and old. Paint peeled near the windows. The yard was simple but clean. Henry opened the car door and went to Buddy. Buddy tried to stand but his legs shook. Henry lifted him gently once again. His back ached but he did not complain. Buddy rested against his chest quietly. Inside the house the air smelled like old wood and soap. Henry set Buddy down on a soft rug. Buddy looked around slowly. He did not bark or panic. He only observed with tired eyes. Henry brought a bowl of water. Buddy drank slowly and carefully. Henry watched closely. He felt responsible now. The house felt warmer than before. Henry prepared a small bed near the heater. He placed an old blanket over it. Buddy lay down with effort. He sighed deeply. Henry sat beside him on the floor. He talked softly about nothing important. He talked about the weather and the road. Buddy listened quietly. That night Henry slept on the couch. He wanted to stay close. Buddy slept through most of the night. Sometimes he shifted and groaned softly. Henry woke each time. He checked if Buddy was breathing. Each breath felt like a gift. Morning arrived with soft light. Henry made simple breakfast for himself. He warmed food for Buddy. Buddy ate slowly. Some food fell to the floor. Henry did not mind. He cleaned it without complaint. Later that day Henry took Buddy outside. The yard was quiet. Birds sat on the fence. Buddy stepped carefully on the grass. His legs trembled, but he kept moving. Henry walked beside him. They did not rush. Neighbors watched from their windows. They had not seen Henry smile in years. One neighbor named Paul waved politely. Henry waved back. Paul noticed the dog. He looked surprised. Henry felt proud without knowing why. Days passed slowly. Each day followed a simple routine. Henry woke early. He fed Buddy. They sat together in the sunlight. Henry read old books aloud. Buddy listened quietly. Sometimes Buddy rested his head on Henry's foot. Henry felt useful again. One afternoon Buddy collapsed while walking. Henry rushed to him carefully. He lifted Buddy with shaking hands. Fear filled his chest. He took Buddy to the local vet. The vet examined Buddy gently. She spoke honestly. She said Buddy was old and weak. She said time was limited. Henry listened without breaking. He nodded slowly. He thanked her and took Buddy home. At home Henry sat beside Buddy for hours. He spoke softly. He said Buddy was not alone. Buddy wagged his tail once. Days turned into weeks. Buddy grew weaker. Henry grew more tired. But neither gave up. Henry learned how to carry Buddy outside. He learned how to help him drink. He learned how to listen. One evening Henry sat by the window. Buddy lay beside him. Henry spoke about his wife. He spoke about missing her voice. He spoke about lonely nights. Buddy rested his head on Henry's knee. Tears fell quietly. Buddy licked Henry's hand once. Henry laughed softly through tears. Neighbors began visiting. They brought food and asked about Buddy. Children waved from the sidewalk. Buddy became known in the street. People smiled more around Henry's house. One morning Buddy did not wake up easily. Henry sat beside him quietly. He held Buddy's paw. He spoke calmly. Buddy opened his eyes slowly. He looked at Henry with trust. He took a deep breath. He rested peacefully. Henry stayed still. He understood. The house felt quiet again. But not empty. Henry wrapped Buddy in the old blanket. Neighbors gathered quietly. Lisa from the shelter arrived later. She had heard the news. She knelt beside Henry. Tears filled her eyes. Henry smiled gently. He thanked her for Buddy. He said Buddy saved him. Everyone stood in silence. They felt something real had happened. The old man and the dog had changed each other forever. The days after Buddy's passing felt slow and quiet. Henry woke up early out of habit. He reached for the empty space near the heater. The small bed was still there. The blanket still carried Buddy's smell. Henry sat down carefully. He held the blanket in his hands. His chest felt heavy but calm. The house was silent but not cold. Sunlight entered through the window. Dust floated softly in the air. Henry stood up and opened the door. The yard looked the same as before. But Henry felt different. Neighbors noticed his door opening again. Paul walked over slowly. He asked how Henry was doing. Henry nodded and said he was all right. Paul placed a hand on Henry's shoulder. He said Buddy was a good dog. Henry smiled softly. Word spread through the street. People spoke kindly about Buddy. Children left small notes near the gate. Some wrote simple thank you messages. Henry read each one carefully. He kept them in a small box. Lisa from the shelter visited again. She brought flowers and warm food. She sat with Henry at the table. They talked about Buddy. Lisa said Buddy's story had reached the shelter. She said people were asking about old dogs now. Henry listened with surprise. Lisa said several older dogs were adopted recently. Henry felt something warm inside. He did not expect that. Days continued to pass. Henry returned to his quiet routine. He cleaned the house slowly. He fixed small things he once ignored. He placed Buddy's bowl on a shelf. He did not remove it. One afternoon Henry sat outside. He watched the road carefully. A car stopped near his house. Lisa stepped out again. This time she was not alone. She walked toward Henry with a smile. Henry stood up slowly. Lisa explained she had an idea. She said people were inspired by Buddy. She said the shelter wanted to honor that. She asked Henry to visit the shelter. Henry hesitated for a moment. He felt nervous returning there. But he agreed. The next morning, Henry dressed carefully. He walked with Lisa into the shelter. The same hallway greeted him. The same barking filled the air. But something felt different. Workers smiled when they saw him. They whispered his name. Henry felt shy. Lisa led him to a small room. People gathered slowly. Shelter workers stood quietly. Lisa spoke gently. She told Buddy's story. She told how an old man chose an old dog. She told how love had no age. Henry listened with tears in his eyes. Lisa thanked him publicly. She said Buddy changed the shelter. Henry did not know what to say. He simply nodded. People clapped softly. Later Henry walked through the cages. Dogs watched him closely. Some wagged their tails. Some lay quietly. Henry stopped often. He knelt slowly. He spoke softly to each dog. Workers noticed how calm the dogs became. One dog approached Henry slowly. It was an older dog with tired eyes. Henry felt his chest tighten. He stayed still. The dog rested near him. Henry smiled gently. He stood up after a while. He thanked Lisa and left. At home Henry thought deeply. He thought about Buddy. He thought about the shelter. He thought about the other dogs. Days later Henry returned to the shelter alone. Lisa was surprised to see him. Henry said he wanted to help. Lisa asked how. Henry said he could sit with the dogs. He said he could talk to them. He said he could give them time. Lisa agreed immediately. Henry began visiting twice a week. He sat with older dogs. He read aloud. He brushed their fur gently. The dogs responded calmly. Workers noticed fewer restless behaviors. Visitors noticed the calm atmosphere. People stayed longer. Older dogs gained attention. Henry became known as the quiet helper. Children waved at him. Families asked him questions. Henry answered softly. He shared Buddy's story often. He said love does not look for perfection. He said love shows up when needed. Months passed. Henry's steps grew slower. But his smile grew stronger. He felt purpose again. One afternoon Henry felt tired. He sat down longer than usual. Lisa noticed and offered help. Henry waved her off gently. He said he was happy. He looked around at the dogs. He felt Buddy near him. He closed his eyes briefly. He breathed calmly. The shelter felt peaceful. People continued adopting older dogs. Buddy's story lived on quietly. Henry's life felt full again. Not because of noise, but because of meaning. The shelter felt brighter that morning. Sunlight passed through the windows softly. Henry arrived earlier than usual. His steps were slow but steady. Workers smiled as they saw him enter. Dogs recognized his presence. Some lifted their heads calmly. Some wagged their tails gently. Henry greeted each one with a soft voice. He moved toward the back cages as always. Older dogs waited there quietly. Henry sat on a small stool. He rested his hands on his knees. He spoke softly about the weather. He spoke about the sky outside. The dogs listened peacefully. Lisa watched from a distance. She noticed Henry looked tired. His face was pale but calm. She walked over carefully. She asked if he needed rest. Henry smiled and said he was fine. He said he felt happy there. Henry continued his routine slowly. He brushed a dog gently. He whispered kind words. The dog leaned closer. Time passed without notice. The shelter grew quiet in the afternoon. Henry remained seated. Lisa noticed he had not moved. She walked closer with concern. She called his name softly. Henry did not answer. She touched his shoulder gently. Henry opened his eyes slowly. He smiled at her. He said he was just resting. He took a deep breath. He looked around the shelter. He said it felt peaceful. He said Buddy would like it here. Lisa knelt beside him. She held his hand. Henry squeezed it lightly. His breathing slowed. His face relaxed. He closed his eyes again. This time he did not open them. The shelter became silent. Workers gathered quietly. Some wiped their tears. Dogs remained calm. Lisa stayed beside Henry. Love. People stopped to read it. Some cried softly. Adoptions increased even more. Older dogs found homes. Families asked about Henry. Lisa told his story gently. She said he gave his time freely. She said he taught patience. Months passed quietly. The shelter created a small program. They named it after Henry and Buddy. The program focused on older dogs. Volunteers joined willingly. People sat with dogs. They listened and cared. The shelter changed. The noise softened. The fear lessened. Hope grew slowly. Paul often visited the shelter now. He volunteered his time. He said Henry inspired him. The neighborhood felt closer. People greeted each other more. They spoke about kindness. Henry's house remained quiet, but it did not feel empty. Sunlight still filled the rooms. Buddy's bowl remained on the shelf. The notes from children stayed in the box. The yard stayed clean. Flowers bloomed near the fence. One evening Lisa visited the house. She stood by the gate quietly. She thanked Henry in her heart. She knew his kindness lived on. Back at the shelter, dogs slept peacefully. Volunteers moved softly. Henry's chair remained in the corner. No one removed it. It reminded them why they were there. People continued choosing the dogs nobody wanted. They remembered the old man who did. They remembered the dog who changed everything. The shelter became a place of second chances. Henry's story traveled far. It touched hearts quietly. Love had spoken through simple acts, and it never faded.